my fellow readers, I, Dark Symphony 777 with a fanfiction review. As always, a link to the store will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story, and any future fanfictions you want me to read or review. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, we're going back to Lawndale. Or maybe Pleasantdale. Da-da-da. Yes, this episode is, I actually decided, I need to go back so I can actually read the author. Okay, so we are reviewing Pleasantdale by Polly Bunny Peep. It is another Daria fanfiction set recommended by Donna Olson. And before I get into the actual review, let me just say this is the story. This story. What? I am completely disappointed by the story. Because Donna, when me and her talked, Donna kind of hyped this story up to be, hey, this is basically Lawndale turns into the 1950s and Jane freaks out. Yeah, she freaks out, but I was like, okay, sounds interesting. And she kind of bigged it up. And then I actually read the story, and then, it's not good. That's the easiest way to say it. So, let's get actually started into the review. So the story actually starts with Jane meeting Daria, and Daria's like dressed out in like all these really old school clothes, like 1950s, 1960s clothes, like post World War II boomer era clothes. And it's actually kind of creepy now that I think about it. And then her smiling. Daria does not smile. That I know of. I'm still watching season 1. So Jane meets Daria. Daria's dressed up in all these, old school clothes. Jane understandably freaks out. It's like, you're not Daria, you are. And then they like go to school, and then everything's like a 1950s retro paradise. It's kind of creepy in a way. And then she meets the heavyset goth chick, and she's a cheerleader. And Jane just loses it, like, nope. And so the plot is like really short, so let me just bear with me. I'm not gonna drag too much on the plot. So Jane wakes up, meets Daria, finds out everything 1950. She freaks out. She wonders, did anyone else not change? She remembers that Charles Ruthenberg III, otherwise known as Upchuck, wasn't at school, so she goes to meet him. He's fine. And then, they try and solve what's happening. And then Jane and Charles fall in love. And then Mr. O'Neill turned up to be working with the devil because he didn't like the fact that people weren't happy. And he made a deal with the devil saying, I wish everyone was happy. And then everything's like 1950. It's really weird. It's like a trippy sort of way. But it's not good. Like, I understand the idea behind this whole gimmick. It actually reminds me of the first mission. No, not the first. Yeah, one of the first missions of Saints Row 4, where they're dragged into the digital world and like everything's like a 1940s, 1950s sitcom. So it kind of has shades of that, but it's not as good as Saints Row. That's because Saints Row 4 is actually hilarious. You got what I need. I couldn't resist. You can't think of Saints Row 4 without thinking of Zinyak messing with Bismarcky. You can't. You really can't. Okay. So what do I think of the plot? I think the plot is probably the best part of the story because the idea, everything is actually done really well, with the exception of the romance. Now, I'm going to say this to the cows come home. I'm literally going to say this every time this comes up, that every story needs a romance. This one's kind of a weird caveat, mainly due to the fact that the author could have actually pulled off a decent enough but rushed romance, some arc, if not for the fact of the implied sex scene. Why did that have to be there? Like, I can deal with Jane and Charles kind of doing the whole falling in love. Sure, it's really rushed, but it wasn't that bad. Not bad enough that I can completely say it was trash. It shouldn't be in the story. But rush enough to say it needs some slow. It needs a little more build up. Probably the only thing I say about the romance. And then the sex scene shows up completely out of the blue. Granted, it's implied. Like, they're not actually showing, but it's implied they had sex. That completely just throws that whole thing over the cliff and say, oh, bye. And I'm left wondering, so why was this rushed? I can understand them falling in love. That I get. But them implying, and then the sex thing, it's like, no, that's just kind of that is way too fast, way too soon. In that kind of context of the story, like, everything else about the romance part is fine. Like, again, rushed, but no complaints. The plot is actually pretty decent. Like, the whole idea behind really did remind me of Saints Row 4, with the idea of everyone just acting like this overly fake, cheery sort of ways, like good old days. It was really funny and entertaining in a creepy sort of way. But other than that, but that's like the most praise I can give to the story. Is like the idea is actually pretty creative and not really badly written. Characters, you basically have Jane and Charles. Jane is fine. I mean, she's snarky, but then she gets like weirdly OOC at the end with her saying, "I love you, Charles," like being over it. And I get in that moment like everything's about to go back to normal, and she's like completely happy and like, "Don't change." Sure, it is OOC of her, but in the scenario that she acted in, it makes sense. Charles, and like he's really there. It's like this is really Jane's story. Like Charles is clearly just there, just next to her. And he really doesn't do anything besides add some dialogue and the romance with Jane. But this is really Jane's story, more or less. That's fine. Grammar. There are a lot of grammar errors in the story. Not like a million, but there is plenty, including an entire sentence that's oddly put in italics. Now this would be fine if not for the fact that it's an actual dialogue line. It's an actual quotation marks and everything. Why is that sentence in italics? I don't know, but that's fine. Pacing. It's only 19,000 words. I actually finished it in like an hour last night. It's pacing wise, it's kind of a weird, quirky middle ground. It's really fast, but at the same time, it kind of fits the whole idea of it being done in a couple days. Especially since the whole strength of the plot is Daria. Jane wakes up, freaks out, meets Charles, brings Charles in to the next day. He freaks out. They go to class. Charles sees like a hidden room. They leave. They go to Boston. They meet some conspiracy theorists. They talk to conspiracy theorists. They stay the night at a hotel. They they meet another two conspiracy theorists. They go back home. They go to the Holiday Island. I didn't think that was an actual thing. I kid you not, I actually looked that up. It's like, there's no way that's an actual thing in Daria. And shock of my surprise, that's an actual thing in Daria. I'm like, what? I'm actually dumbfounded. That's such a thing called Holiday Island, where holidays are teenagers that have to be perpetually happy exist. That's just, I don't know whether to say that's weird or creepy or both. I'm actually kind of leaning towards both. And then they go back home, and then they sneak out to try and get into the locker room. Then they have the sex scene, implied sex scene. And then they go back home, they talk, they go to class, and then they go back, they sneak back in, they go underground, and then they stop. And then they find out Mr. O'Neill was the reason behind everyone acting weird, because he was upset that people were upset. And we got like a little moral from Jane, and and then O'Neill is like, hey, I'll go change it. I'm literally pulling the face, like, no, none of that. Shame on you. That's literally the long and short of it. It's literally the long and short. Oh my god, this may be one of my shortest reviews yet. Wow. Yeah. My main consensus about the story is that it's very boring. Like, it really could have been something. Like, I don't think it's bad. It just really missed the mark on what it needed to do to be good. So, would I recommend the story? No, I can't. I reasonably cannot recommend the story. I cannot. And you'll see why in a little bit. What was my favorite part? Probably, I actually do have a favorite part of the story. It's actually at the very end, the last chapter, with Jane literally running towards Daria, and the author takes the time to write down that Daria's like, well, not in that way. She's like, she gets surprised at like Jane being happy. She's running at me. Is it opposite day? I'm like, just the image of Daria. Think about this. Daria's whole shtick is she's like near emotionless and like, I talk in a very monotone voice. Snark, snark, snark. And just her getting completely emotive and getting kind of freaked out at a moment. It's like, while Jane's just running up to glop her. And I'm like, that's actually kind of funny. In a very cute, sort of endearing way. So it's like, that's probably my favorite story. It's better than most. I don't know, some stories I don't even have a favorite part because nothing really stands out to me. That part at least stood out to me. So, what would I do to change the story? Honestly, there's a lot you need to do to work on the story. But first off, keep the plot the same. Keep the plot relatively the same because it's actually a good plot. It just needed time to be fleshed out. That's literally all in terms of the plot. That's all the story needed was being fleshed out, at least a little. Like, for example, the whole confrontation with Mr. O'Neill. They just talked to him for all of like a second. Like, O'Neill gives his reasonings, and Jane does the moral thing, and then O'Neill's like, "Okay, I'll go change everything." It's like, that is completely anticlimactic in a bad sort of way. I would have at least expected like a debate, like some kind of longer conversation. Sure, it's Mr. O'Neill. He's like a kind of a pushover sort of thing, but you'd think in this sort of situation he would at least have a little bit of a fight back, just a little bit. Especially since, I don't know, he's working with the devil. You would think that he would at least argue at least a tiny bit. Granted, it'd still be kind of easy, but it was just too easy for what was expected of, trying to fix things. Like, I wanted it to be at least a little easy, not like have Mr. O'Neill push back at least a little, like just some counterpoints. Like I'm not acting like Jane just pulls back her fist and punches him in the face and demands to change everything. I was expecting at least a little bit of a debate. Just that was just really bad. It needed to be lengthened. The story needs to be lengthened. I'm all like not every story. And when I say this, people probably think, oh great, he wants another like 100,000 plus epic sort of thing. No, not every story needs to be like that. Some stories, they need to be lengthened, but not outrageously. If anything, this story would probably work best if there was no like at least another 10,000, 11,000 words in it, somewhere between like the 30 to 50,000 word range, because this was way too short to really get into the idea of everything that's going on, giving us time to get to know the characters a little bit more. The characters are at least fine when they show up, and all the characters, they're fine. They're supposed to be like weirdo, wacko mirror images, like this is what the 1950s of this character would act like. This is what the 1950s of this character would act like. And that's fine and dandy, but Jane and and Charles specifically, and also the conspiracy theorist group that they were just there. I would have liked at least a little. I think this story would have been very good if it was very dialogue heavy. Mainly due to the fact this seems like a very good dialogue heavy story. Like there are stories out there that are very dialogue heavy that are actually extremely good, like Misconceptions. Like I did a review of that story a while ago. Powerpuff Girls, very, very heavy in dialogue. Like it's very, very heavy in like character development and dialogue. Granted, there is a lot of prose in it, but like the main whole gimmick of that story was character development. But go check out that review when you have the chance. With Jane and Charles constantly talking about what's going to happen, how everything's changing, what's going to how are they going to fix this? Maybe work on their romance a little more. Like not a whole lot. I would certainly at least axe the implied sex scene. Like just have them like instead of doing the sex scene, just have them lay down on the football field looking at the stars, just talking, and then they fall asleep because they lost track of time. I can deal with that. Have the whole end result be the same. Jane being happy that everything's going back to normal and telling Charles, "Don't change." I do think the ending could have been done better. Not so much, the ending scene is just basically Daria being glommed by Jane. I think the ending should have actually been them going to school, Jane seeing Charles, Jane inviting Charles to like, hey, come join us, and then Daria's like snarking, like, wait, what are you doing? So just deal with it, and then Jane just wrapping her arm around Charles and wrapping one arm around Daria, and then all three of them walking to school. That's I think would have been a better ending to the story of just Jane. So yeah, there's a lot that could have been done. I do think the end result is decent, but not enough to really want me to recommend it. And it still needs it's a rush story. Like the idea is fine. The romance is rushed but fine. The pacing is way too fast. But it's a really rough around the edge story. It needs polishing. Like it needs a lot of polishing. That's the only if it has some polishing, who knows? Maybe I might recommend it, but it does need some work on it. And finally, why is this story 7? I want to end with this before I end the video. Why is the story like 17 chapters? It's a 19,000 word story, but it's 17 chapters. Half of those chapters need to go. Like, unless you're doing like implementing all the ideas I suggested, This should not be a 17,000 word story. It should at most be like a 10 chapter story. Like, that's fine. So that is my review on Pleasantdale. Next time I will be, what's the name of that story? I will actually be going back to the ponies with One in the Million. Or maybe Morgan versus Morgendorfer. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut!